The sun was beginning to set over the city, casting long golden shadows across the polished marble entrance of the Grand Horizon Hotel. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the frantic energy of 100 people trying to be perfect. This was the night of the annual Heritage Gala, the kind of event where a single dress cost more than a small house and the guest list was guarded more closely than a national secret. In the middle of this whirlwind was a young woman named Anna. She didn't belong among the silk dresses and the diamond necklaces. She wore a simple dark navy uniform that marked her as part of the event's staff. Her job was to make sure everything ran smoothly, which mostly meant staying invisible while fixing other people's mistakes. She moved through the ballroom with a quiet efficiency, her eyes constantly scanning the room for a tilted centerpiece or guest who looked like they were about to lose their temper. Anna had worked for the catering company for 3 years, and she was the best they had. She was patient, she was fast, and most importantly, she never complained. But tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a tension that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Across the room, standing near a towering fountain of champagne, was a group of people who seemed to radiate a different kind of energy. They were led by a woman named Victoria, a socialite whose family name was synonymous with old money and even older grudges. Victoria was surrounded by her usual circle of friends, people who spent their days looking for flaws in others to make themselves feel more important. Victoria was bored, and when Victoria was bored, she became dangerous. Her eyes drifted across the room, past the dignitaries and the celebrities, until they landed on Anna. She watched the way Anna moved, the humble way she bowed her head, the way she carefully picked up a discarded napkin. To Victoria, Anna wasn't a person. She was a prop, a target. "Look at her," Victoria whispered to her friends, a sharp smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "The little mouse. She thinks she's so invisible, doesn't she?" Her friends chuckled, their eyes following Victoria's gaze. "She's been working these events for years," one of them remarked. "I don't think I've ever seen her speak. It's like she's a robot." "Everyone has a breaking point," Victoria said softly. "I wonder what it would take to make the mouse squeak." As the evening progressed, Victoria's plan began to take shape. It wasn't enough to just insult Anna. She wanted a spectacle. She wanted something that would be talked about for weeks. She began to whisper to her companions, pointing toward the stage where the keynote speech would eventually take place. The stage was draped in heavy velvet curtains, and directly behind the podium was a narrow walkway used by the tech crew. Meanwhile, Anna was completely unaware of the eyes on her. She was focused on her task. Her back had been aching for hours, a dull throb that she had learned to ignore. Underneath her uniform, hidden away from the world, was a secret she had carried since she was a child. It was something she never talked about, something that defined her life in ways no one in this room could ever understand. At 8 p.m., the lights in the ballroom dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd as the host took the stage. This was the moment Victoria had been waiting for. She signaled to one of the younger men in her group, a guy named Julian, who was always eager to stay in Victoria's good graces. "Go to the kitchen," Victoria commanded. "Tell the supervisor that we need the lead server, the quiet one on stage, to present the Employee of the Year award. Tell them it's a last-minute surprise from the board." It was a lie, of course. There was no award, but in the chaos of a high-stakes event, no one questioned a request that sounded official. A few minutes later, Anna was approached by her manager. He looked stressed and confused. "Anna, I don't know why they didn't tell us sooner, but they want you on stage. Apparently, the donors want to recognize the staff, and they picked you. You need to go up there right now." Anna's heart skipped a beat. "Me? On stage, sir? I'm not dressed for that. I'm just a server." "There's no time to argue," the manager said, pushing her toward the wings of the stage. Just go out there, smile, take whatever they give you, and come back. It'll be over in 30 seconds. Anna felt a wave of panic. She hated being noticed. She liked the shadows. But she also knew she couldn't say no. If she refused, she might lose the job she desperately needed to pay for her mother's medical bills. She took a deep breath, smoothed down her navy vest, and stepped into the darkness behind the curtain. As she waited for her cue, she didn't see Julian slipping through the shadows on the other side of the stage. He was holding a small, sharp Tula seam ripper he had swiped from the cloakroom sewing kit. The host's voice boomed over the speakers. And now, we want to take a moment to honor the backbone of tonight's event. Please welcome to the stage, representing our wonderful service staff, Anna. The spotlight swung around, blinding her. Anna stepped forward, her legs feeling like lead. The applause was polite but distant. As she walked toward the center of the stage, she felt a sudden, sharp tug at the back of her uniform. She stumbled slightly, but she didn't stop. She assumed she had just snagged her clothes on a piece of equipment. She didn't see the way the fabric of her vest and the thin shirt underneath had been precision cut by Julian as she passed him in the dark. She reached the podium, squinting against the bright lights. She looked out into the sea of faces. In the front row, she saw Victoria. The woman wasn't clapping. She was leaning forward, a look of hungry anticipation on her face. She was holding her phone up, the camera lens pointed directly at Anna. I don't know what to say, Anna stammered into the microphone. Her voice echoed through the massive room. Turn around, someone yelled from the darkness of the crowd. It sounded like a joke, but then another voice joined in. Show us the back, we can't see the award. Anna felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The audience started to titter. The laughter wasn't friendly. It was sharp and mocking. She looked at the host, but he was looking behind her, his mouth hanging open in shock. Then, a sudden draft of cold air hit the skin of her lower back. She felt the weight of her uniform shift, the fabric falling away as if it had simply dissolved. She didn't know yet that Victoria had planned this perfectly. The tug she felt earlier was Julian finishing the job. Now, as she stood in front of the most powerful people in the city, the entire back of her outfit began to split open. The laughter grew louder, turning into a roar of mockery. People began to point. Cell phones were pulled out by the dozens, the flashes of cameras going off like strobe lights. Anna felt the heat of embarrassment wash over her, a feeling so intense she thought she might pass out. She turned around instinctively to run, to hide, to get away from the cruel eyes. But as she turned, she exposed exactly what the crowd wanted to see. Or rather, what they thought they wanted to see. The laughter didn't stop immediately, but the tone began to change. The people in the front rows, the ones closest to the stage, suddenly went quiet. The phones stayed up, but the fingers stopped tapping. Victoria's smirk froze on her face. She leaned in, squinting, trying to make sense of what the spotlight was revealing on the skin of Anna's lower back. It wasn't just skin. And it wasn't a mistake. Anna stood there trembling, her back exposed to the world, unaware that the humiliation her enemies had planned was about to backfire in a way that would change everything. The silence started at the front and began to ripple through the room like a wave, until the only sound left was the hum of the air conditioning and the frantic beating of Anna's own heart. The silence in the ballroom was heavy, the kind of silence that feels like a physical weight. Just moments ago, the room had been filled with the cruel, sharp sounds of laughter and the clicking of phone cameras. People had been leaning into each other, whispering jokes about the clumsy server and the wardrobe disaster. But as the bright stage lights hit the skin of Anna's lower back, the air seemed to leave the room. Anna stood perfectly still. She felt the cold air on her skin where her uniform had been sabotaged, and she felt the stinging heat of tears prickling the corners of her eyes. She wanted to bolt, to find a dark corner and disappear forever. She assumed the silence was because people were disgusted or shocked by her exposed skin. She didn't realize that their eyes weren't fixed on her embarrassment, but on a mystery they couldn't explain. Victoria, sitting in the front row, felt her heart skip a beat. She had expected to see a cheap tattoo or perhaps a birthmark she could make fun of later. Instead, her eyes were locked onto something far more complex. Across the small of Anna's back was an intricate, shimmering mark. It wasn't a typical ink tattoo. It looked like a series of interconnected geometric patterns, etched with such precision that they almost looked like they were part of her very DNA. But it wasn't the art itself that froze the room. It was the color. The mark glowed with a faint, metallic silver sheen that seemed to catch the stage lights and reflect them back with a soft, pulsing light. "Wait," a voice whispered from the second row. It was an elderly man, a retired professor of history who was known for his vast knowledge of lost cultures. He stood up slowly, his eyes wide behind thick glasses. "That's not a tattoo." Anna, still trembling, slowly reached her hand behind her to try and pull the shredded remains of her vest together. Her fingers brushed against the mark, and she winced. To her, this mark had always been a source of pain and secrecy. She had been told by her mother since she was a little girl to never, ever let anyone see it. "It's a burden, Anna," her mother had whispered on her deathbed. "There are people who would do anything to find it. Keep it covered. Live a quiet life." And she had. For 24 years, she had lived in the shadows, wearing high collars and thick layers, even in the heat of summer. She had worked jobs where she was just a number, a face in the crowd. Now, because of a mean-spirited prank, her mother's dying wish had been shattered in front of 500 people. "Stay right there," the host said, his voice no longer booming and professional, but shaky and uncertain. He stepped toward Anna, forgetting the microphone in his hand. The feedback squealed through the speakers, making everyone flinch. Victoria's face turned from a smirk to a mask of pure frustration. "What is wrong with everyone?" she snapped, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "It's just a scar, or some weird cult symbol. Security, get her off the stage. She's ruining the gala." But for the first time in her life, Victoria was being ignored. No one moved to help her. No security guard stepped forward. Instead, the elderly professor walked toward the stage. "Young lady," the professor said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "My name is Professor Thorne. I've spent 40 years studying the lineage of the Silver Crest. May I look closer?" Anna looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. "I just want to leave," she whispered. "Please, just let me go." "Please," the professor urged. "If that is what I think it is, you are in no danger from us. But the world needs to see this." By now, the cameras weren't just taking photos for social media gossip. Professional photographers from major news outlets who were there to cover the gala had turned their massive lenses toward the stage. The flashes were constant now, creating a blinding wall of white light. Anna felt trapped, like a deer in the headlights of a speeding car. Julian, the man who had actually cut her dress, was backing away into the shadows. He saw the way the wind was shifting. This wasn't going the way Victoria had promised. He realized that by trying to humiliate Anna, they might have accidentally unveiled something world-changing. He didn't want to be anywhere near the fallout. On stage, Anna felt a strange sensation. For years, the mark on her back had felt cold, like a piece of ice pressed against her spine. But now, Under the intense heat of the stage lights and the focused attention of the crowd, it began to feel warm. It was a deep, buzzing warmth that started at the base of her neck and radiated down to her fingertips. The professor reached the edge of the stage and looked at the mark from just a few feet away. He gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. "It's the seal of the meridian," he breathed. The microphone on the podium picked up his whisper, broadcasting it to the entire room. A murmur broke out among the guests. Most didn't know what that meant, but those who did, the oldest, wealthiest families in the room, looked like they had seen a ghost. The Meridian was a legendary group of healers and peacekeepers who had disappeared over a century ago. They were said to be the secret protectors of the world's most vital resources. Their seal was not a tattoo, but a biological marker passed down through a single bloodline. Victoria stood up, her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. This is a scam. She's a server. She cleans up spilled drinks for $10 an hour. She's nothing." "She is the last of the line," Professor Thorne said, turning to face the crowd. His voice was strong now, filled with an authority that silenced Victoria instantly. "We had been searching for the Meridian here for 3 generations. We thought the line was broken when the great library was burned. But here she is." Anna felt the world spinning. The last of a line. An heir. She thought of her mother, who had spent her life cleaning houses and skipping meals so Anna could have shoes for school. She thought of the tiny, one-bedroom apartment they had shared, and the way her mother would cry silently at night when she thought Anna was asleep. Was this why they lived like fugitives? Was this why they never stayed in one city for more than a year? Suddenly, a man in a dark suit, someone who hadn't been part of the gala staff, stepped onto the stage from the other side. He didn't look like a guest or a server. He had the cold, calculated look of someone who was used to giving orders. He walked straight toward Anna. "Miss," the man said, his voice like cold steel, "you need to come with us. Now, for your own safety." Anna backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who are you?" "I'm not going anywhere." The man reached into his jacket, but before he could pull anything out, the ballroom doors at the back of the hall burst open. A group of men and women in white uniforms, looking like a cross between doctors and soldiers, flooded into the room. The crowd erupted into chaos. People were screaming, pushing chairs over as they tried to get out of the way. In the middle of it all, Anna stood on the stage, her dress torn, her secret exposed, and her entire life falling apart in a matter of seconds. She looked down at Victoria, who was now cowering behind a table, her perfect prank having ignited a fire she couldn't control. Anna realized then that the girl who walked into this hotel as a nobody was gone forever. The humiliation was over, but something much more terrifying was beginning. The ballroom had transformed from a place of high-class celebration into a scene of absolute confusion. Anna stood in the center of the stage, her hands clutching the front of her ruined uniform, feeling like an animal trapped in a cage. The man in the dark suit was only a few feet away from her now, his eyes fixed on the glowing mark on her back with a hunger that made her skin crawl. "Stay back," Professor Thorne shouted, surprisingly brave for a man of his age. He stepped between Anna and the stranger. "You have no authority here. This young woman is under the protection of the Historical Preservation Society until we can verify her lineage." The man in the suit didn't even look at the professor. He simply made a small gesture with his hand, and 2 more men appeared from the side of the stage. They moved with a terrifying, silent coordination. "We aren't here for history, old man," the stranger said. "We are here for the source." Anna felt a surge of adrenaline. Every instinct her mother had drilled into her, run, hide, don't trust anyone, screamed at her to move. She didn't wait to see what the men would do next. She spun around, ignored the stairs and jumped off the side of the stage, landing awkwardly on the carpeted floor. The crowd was a sea of moving bodies. Guests were tripping over their long gowns, and waiters were dropping trays of expensive appetizers as they scrambled for the exits. Anna used the chaos to her advantage. She was small and fast, and she knew the layout of this hotel better than anyone. She ducked under a long table draped in white linen, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Behind her, she could hear Victoria's voice, shrill and panicked. "This is my party. Someone call the police. She's just a thief. She must have stolen something." Victoria was still trying to make this about herself, but no one was listening. The socialite was knocked aside by the men in white uniforms who had just entered the room. These newcomers in white weren't like the men in suits. They didn't look like they were looking for a fight. They looked like they were looking for a miracle. They carried strange, handheld sensors that hummed as they moved through the room. Anna crawled out from under the table near the service entrance. She needed to get to the locker room, get her bag, and disappear into the city. But as she reached the heavy metal door, a hand grabbed her arm. She let out a short, sharp gasp and turned to swing her fist, but she stopped when she saw who it was. It was Leo, the youngest dishwasher in the kitchen. He was barely 19 and usually too shy to look Anna in the eye. Now, he looked terrified but determined. "This way," he whispered, pulling her toward a small service elevator used for trash. "The front is blocked. They've closed the main gates." "Who are they, Leo?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. "Why are they doing this?" "I don't know," Leo said, hitting the button for the basement. "But I saw them in the parking lot earlier. They have black vans with no license plates." "They weren't waiting for the gala to end. They were waiting for you." As the elevator descended, the buzzing sensation on Anna's back grew stronger. It wasn't painful anymore. It felt like a low-voltage current was running through her entire body. She leaned against the cold metal wall of the elevator, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Leo, you have to tell me the truth," Anna said, looking at him. "Do I look different?" Leo hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The mark. It's glowing, Anna. Not like a light bulb, like it's breathing. And your eyes. The centers of them are turning the same silver color." Anna slumped to the floor. Everything her mother had told her was true. Her mother hadn't been crazy or paranoid. She had been protecting a secret that was now literally coming to light. The elevator doors opened into the damp, concrete basement. It smelled of laundry detergent and old grease. They ran through the corridors, past rows of industrial washing machines that were thumping rhythmically. Anna grabbed her backpack from her locker, not even stopping to change out of her torn clothes. She threw a heavy hoodie over her shoulders and zipped it up to her chin, desperate to hide the silver light. "You have to go through the delivery tunnel," Leo said, pointing toward a dark passage at the far end of the room. "It leads out to the alley behind the grocery store. They won't think to look there." "Thank you, Leo," Anna said, grabbing his hand for a brief second. "I'll never forget this." "Run, Anna," he said. "Just run." She bolted into the tunnel. It was narrow and wet, the only light coming from flickering bulbs every 20 feet. She could hear footsteps echoing behind her heavy, rhythmic boots. They had found the basement. She reached the end of the tunnel and pushed against the heavy steel bar of the exit door. It burst open, and she stumbled out into the cool night air. The alley was dark and smelled of rain. She didn't stop to look back. She ran toward the street, her sneakers hitting the pavement with a steady beat. As she reached the corner, a black car pulled up, the tires screeching as it cut her off. Anna froze. The window rolled down, but it wasn't the man in the suit. It was Professor Thorne. "Get in," he hissed. "Quickly, before they see you." Anna hesitated. Could she trust him? He was the one who had started the air talk in the first place. But as the boots echoed louder from the delivery tunnel, she realized she had no choice. She dived into the back seat, and the professor floored the accelerator. As they sped away from the hotel, the professor looked at her through the rearview mirror. His face was pale. "I owe you an apology, my dear. I didn't realize that revealing the truth would put a target on your back so quickly. I thought the others were just myths." "What others?" Anna asked, her voice small. "The people who believe the Meridian bloodline isn't just about peace," Thorne explained. "The mark on your back, it's not just a symbol. It's a key. It's a map to the world's last pure water source, hidden deep beneath the city. In a world where resources are disappearing, you are the most valuable person on Earth." Anna looked out the window at the passing city lights. She thought about her mother's tired hands and her quiet life. She wasn't a key. She wasn't a map. She was just a girl who wanted to pay her bills and be left alone. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because the Earth chose your ancestors to be the guardians," Thorne said gently. "And now, whether you like it or not, the world is going to try to take that power from you. We need to get you to the sanctuary before the sun rises." Suddenly, a loud thud hit the roof of the car. The metal buckled inward. Anna screamed as a hand smashed through the passenger side window. The men in the suits hadn't given up. They had caught up. The car swerved violently as Professor Thorne struggled to keep the steering wheel steady. Glass shards sprayed across the dashboard like diamonds, and the cold night air rushed into the vehicle with a roar. The man who had smashed the window was clinging to the side of the car with terrifying strength. His face was a mask of cold determination. His eyes fixed on Anna in the back seat. "Hold on!" Thorne yelled, slamming on the brakes. The sudden stop jerked everyone forward. The man on the outside lost his grip and tumbled onto the asphalt, rolling several times before springing back to his feet with unnatural agility. Thorne didn't wait. He shifted the car into reverse, tires screaming, and then pivoted to roar down a side street. Anna was pressed against the door, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. "They aren't stopping," she cried out, looking back. Two black SUVs had turned the corner and were gaining on them. "Professor, who are these people? This isn't just about a story or a history book." Thorne gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "They call themselves the Syndicate. To them, the Meridian isn't a sacred lineage, it's a biological gold mine. They don't want to protect the world's resources, Anna. They want to own them. They believe your DNA is the only thing that can unlock the ancient vaults where the pure water is stored." As they sped through the industrial district, the sensation on Anna's back changed again. The warmth was now a searing heat. It felt like a hot coal was pressed against her spine. She let out a cry of pain and arched her back. "It hurts," she gasped. "The mark. It's burning." Thorne looked in the mirror, his expression changing from fear to awe. "It's reacting to the Syndicate's proximity. The mark isn't just a map. It's a sensor. It knows they are close. Anna, you have to try to stay calm. If your heart rate goes too high, the energy might become too much for your body to handle." "How can I stay calm?" she shouted as one of the SUVs rammed into their rear bumper. The impact sent the car fishtailing toward a row of parked shipping containers. Thorne managed to regain control at the last second, darting into a narrow gap between two warehouses. He drove the car deep into the shadows and killed the lights. "We have to go on foot," he whispered. "The car is a tracker. We can't hide in it anymore." They scrambled out of the car. Anna's legs felt like jelly, but the heat in her back was giving her a strange, desperate energy. They ran through a maze of rusted metal and wooden pallets. The air here smelled of salt and stagnant water. "In here!" Thorn pointed to an old, abandoned pumping station. The door was hanging off its hinges. They slipped inside, and Thorn pushed a heavy iron bar across the entrance. Inside, the building was vast and echoing. Huge, rusted pipes ran along the ceiling like the ribs of a giant beast. The only light came from the moon shining through the cracked skylights high above. Anna slumped against a brick wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the cold floor. She unzipped her hoodie just a few inches. The silver glow was so bright now that it shone through her thin inner shirt, casting long, dancing shadows on the floor. "Why did my mother keep this from me?" Anna asked, her voice breaking. "She let us live in poverty. She worked herself to death. If I had this power or whatever it is, couldn't she have had a better life?" Thorn sat down near her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "She did it to give you a life at all, Anna. The moment the world knows who you are, you cease to be a person. You become a prize. She wanted you to have friends, a job, a favorite coffee shop. She wanted you to be human. She sacrificed everything to keep you out of this war." Anna looked at her hands. They were shaking. She thought of Victoria and the people at the gala. They had laughed at her because she was just a server. They had tried to humiliate her to feel powerful. But the truth was, she held more power in her smallest finger than all of them combined. Suddenly, the heavy iron bar on the door began to groan. Something was pushing against it from the outside, not with a shoulder, but with a machine. The metal started to bend. "They're here," Thorn whispered, standing up and looking for an exit. "There's a ladder in the back leading to the old tunnels. You have to go, Anna. I'll try to distract them." "I'm not leaving you," Anna said, standing up. "You have to," Thorn insisted, standing up. "You have to," Thorn insisted. "I'm just an old man with some books. You are the future. If they catch you, the world loses its last chance at balance." The door gave way with a deafening crash. The man in the dark suit stepped into the building, followed by 4 others. He held a device that looked like a high-tech compass. The needle was spinning wildly, pointing straight at Anna. "Enough running," the man said. His voice was calm, which made it even scarier. "You don't even know what you are, do you? You're struggling to breathe, your skin is burning, and you're terrified. We can make all that stop. We have the technology to stabilize the mark. We can make you a goddess." "She's not interested," Thorn shouted, stepping forward. The man in the suit didn't even look at him. He raised a small silver tube and fired. A dart hit Thorn in the shoulder, and the professor collapsed instantly, his eyes rolling back. "No!" Anna screamed. She ran to the professor's side, but the men were already surrounding her. "It's over, little mouse," the man said, using the same nickname Victoria had used. He reached out to grab her arm. As his fingers brushed her skin, something happened. The heat on Anna's back didn't just burn her anymore. It exploded outward. A wave of shimmering silver light erupted from her body, pulsing like a heartbeat. The force of it was so strong that it knocked the men backward, sending them flying into the rusted pipes. The man in the suit hit the wall with a thud, his device shattering into 1,000 pieces. He looked up, his face filled with genuine terror. Anna stood in the center of the room. She wasn't crouching or hiding anymore. She was standing tall. Her hair seemed to float in the air, and her eyes were now solid, glowing silver. She didn't feel like a server, and she didn't feel like a victim. She looked at the man who had tried to hurt the only person who had helped her. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It sounded like 1,000 voices speaking at once. deep and ancient. The room began to vibrate. The water in the pipes started to hum. Anna realized that she wasn't just a map or a key. She was the commander. The air in the pumping station felt electric, like the moments right before a massive thunderstorm. The silver light coming from Anna was so bright that it washed out the shadows, turning the rusted warehouse into a room of shimmering mercury. The man in the suit scrambled backward on his hands and knees, his face pale. He had spent his whole career studying the legend of the Meridian, but he had never expected the power to be so raw and alive. Anna looked down at her hands. The veins in her wrists were glowing with that same soft silver light. She didn't feel heavy or tired anymore. The back pain that had bothered her for years was gone, replaced by a sense of connection to everything around her. She could feel the water moving in the pipes deep underground. She could feel the moisture in the air and even the sweat on the foreheads of the men who were trying to capture her. What are you doing?" the man in the suit stammered. "I'm stopping you," Anna said. Her voice was calm now, but it carried a weight that made the walls vibrate. She knelt beside Professor Thorne. He was still breathing, but his face was gray. She placed her hand on his shoulder where the dart had hit him. As she did, the silver light flowed from her palm into his skin. The professor's eyes fluttered open, and the color returned to his cheeks almost instantly. He looked up at her, his mouth falling open in awe. "It's not just a map," Thorne whispered. "It's life. You are a source of life." The man in the suit saw his chance. He reached into his belt for another weapon, but Anna didn't even turn around. She simply flicked her wrist toward the floor. A pipe beneath the man's feet burst open, and a high-pressure jet of water hit him, pinning him against the wall. It wasn't meant to kill him, but it held him there with the strength of 100 men. "The gala is over," Anna said, looking at the other syndicate members who were frozen in fear. "Go back to whoever sent you. Tell them the Meridian isn't a prize to be won. It's a protector, and I am not hiding anymore." Terrified, the men grabbed their injured leader and scrambled out of the broken door, disappearing into the night. They didn't look back. They knew they were outmatched by something they couldn't even begin to understand. As the silence returned to the warehouse, the silver glow began to fade. The intense heat on Anna's back cooled down to a comfortable warmth. She slumped against a crate, suddenly feeling the weight of the last few hours. "What happens now?" she asked Thorne. The professor stood up, brushing the dust from his jacket. "Now, the world changes. Victoria and her friends probably posted those videos of you online. By tomorrow morning, everyone will be looking for the Glow Girl. You can't go back to your apartment, Anna. And you certainly can't go back to being a server." Anna thought about her old life. She thought about the endless shifts, the rude customers, and the way Victoria had tried to strip away her dignity just for a laugh. She realized that Victoria hadn't just revealed a mark. She had set Anna free from a cage she didn't even know she was in. "Good," Anna said, a small, confident smile touching her lips. "I was tired of that uniform anyway." Over the next few weeks, the news was flooded with the story of the Heritage Gala. The video of Anna's dress being torn had gone viral, but not for the reasons Victoria had hoped. Instead of being the butt of a joke, Anna had become a symbol of mystery and strength. The humiliation had turned into the most watched moment of the decade. Victoria's life had fallen apart almost instantly. The public was disgusted by her cruelty. The sponsors of the gala pulled their funding, and her family's reputation was ruined. She went from being the queen of the social scene to a person no one wanted to be seen with. She had tried to make someone else small, and in doing so, she had shown the world how small she really was. But Anna was nowhere to be found. Deep in the mountains, in a place where the water ran so clear it looked like liquid crystal, a small cabin sat nestled among the trees. Anna stood on the porch, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. She didn't have to hide her back anymore. She lived in a place where the air was pure, and the only sounds were the birds and the rushing stream nearby. Professor Thorne visited her often. He helped her understand the history of her family and how to use her gift to help the earth. She wasn't a goddess, and she wasn't a weapon. She was a guardian. One afternoon, as she sat by the water, she thought about that night in the ballroom. She remembered the fear and the way the laughter had cut through her. She realized that the people who had tried to humiliate her were actually the ones who gave her the greatest gift. They had forced her to stop hiding. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled NAMA tag that said, "Anna, service staff." She looked at it for a moment, remembering the girl who used to keep her head down and never speak up. Then she let the name tag go into the stream. She watched as the water carried it away, spinning it around until it disappeared into the current. Anna stood up and walked back toward the cabin. Her back was straight, and her head was held high. The silver mark was hidden beneath her shirt, but she didn't care who knew it was there. She wasn't afraid of the light anymore. She was the light. The world would always have people like Victoria, people who wanted to tear others down to feel tall. But Anna knew the secret now. True power didn't come from a bank account or a famous name. It came from knowing exactly who you were and having the courage to show it, even when the world was waiting for you to fail. As the sun set over the mountains, the forest seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Anna took a deep breath of the mountain air and smiled. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was home.